We are a nonprofit, federally incorporated, that started several years ago, and our main funding comes from the government's Structural Innovation Fund, Stream 5. Next slide, please, Dylan. So our focus is to advance, excuse me, everyone, drug development in areas where market solutions have not really worked. So you can think about things like antimicrobial resistance, pandemic preparedness, but also rare diseases and even some areas that are large market, like neurodegenerative diseases, where we really haven't seen much advance for a long time. And so we use open science and artificial intelligence to help mobilize people in this community to advance drug development. As I said, we were founded in 2023. We are related to the Structural Genomics Consortium with its Toronto labs. We have a $49 million Strategic Innovation Fund investment from the Government of Canada that started a few years ago. And as I said, trying to translate what's happening in Canada into accessible and affordable medicines. Slide, please. So we have several programs that are described on this list. The first one that we started with, which actually preceded the actual starting of our grant, is the cash challenges. And these are aimed to really accelerate development in AI drug discovery by setting up a competition. So we open up the competition to Canadian and foreign companies. We subsidize the Canadians who participate, and we give them a pretty hard target to go after. And then they propose a bunch of molecules. We get them manufactured and we test them out in the Structural Genomics Consortium's labs, and we report back to them. The best competitors move forward to a second round where they get to propose more molecules based on the initial data. And then we have winners. It takes several years for the whole cycle to go through, but we've already done a number. We're on cache 7 right now, the 7th iteration of it, and all the data eventually becomes public. So we don't disclose the exact methodology, but general descriptions of the methodology. But all the data around the molecules themselves and their performance is publicly disclosed. The second project is developing medicines through open science, DEMOS, and this funds preclinical drug discovery and development work, again, in our areas of focus. The grants there assist either private firms, SMEs, combinations of SMEs and university laboratories who have some product that they're moving forward. It undergoes scientific review, and we then fund it. And then what I'm talking about today is the Open Science Advisory Services. And this funds firms that are seeking assistance from third parties to advance drug discovery. It could be around creating regulatory portfolios, IP strategies, commercialization strategies, and even some aspects of clinical trials. Can I have the next slide, please? So our big funding mechanisms are DEMOS and OSAS. And both are working to advance drug discovery, but they have different foci. So DEMOS is to advance drugs to the IND readiness level. They've got a total of 15 million to allocate over 4 years. We've already spent or allocated 2.4 million out of that, with more coming down soon. We cover up to 50% of the costs of developing the drug, up to a maximum per project of 3.2 million, but we can have several projects as you move from stage to stage. you have to be beyond validation to get in there. And as I said, the funding is up to and including application for IND. OSAS is to fund, as I said, third parties to assist firms. We have a $4.9 million budget. Generally, we cover 33% of the costs. But in certain rare circumstances, we can go up to 50%. This just launched, so the total 4.9 million is available. For both of these projects, it must include a Canadian organization within the consortium. It could be an international consortium, but we are focused on the Canadian aspects of it. You must provide proof of the matching funds, whether 50% for DEMOS or 67% for OSAS, at least by the time that you sign an agreement with us. And for both of these projects, you must be aligned with our open science policy. Next slide, please, Dylan. So more specifically, this is to get funds to be spent in Canada. That's really important. That's a government restriction, not ours. And you can look at things like, you know, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a for-profit SME, it could be an academic institution. As I said, proof of matching funds, and it has to fall generally within our scope, our mandate of where market solutions are limited. Next slide, please. So examples could include hiring a CRO to support drug development, to generate data, for example, run or organize a trial. It could be hiring a consultant, whether it be a lawyer or another type of consultant to oversee putting together the regulatory dossier for submission, or sorry about the phone, or developing an IP strategy. And it could be, as I said, anybody who's a third party. It cannot support employees of your firm. Next slide, please.
My turn.
Off to you, Dylan.
Thank you. Okay, so over the next, hopefully less than 20 minutes, I want to take you through what kinds of projects apply, what kinds of projects may apply, what kinds of um, people or organizations or project or yeah, can apply, and take you through some of the details of the application process, just to try to make this as easy as possible. I've organized it into what you can think of as frequently asked questions. So hopefully we can answer most of those before we even get to the Q&A period. So first off, what kind of projects can apply? We are accepting applications for developing products or services in any life sciences area, with special attention being paid to projects where open sharing and collaboration are really important for advancement. If you have questions about that, and this is going to be a recurring refrain, please reach out to us to just talk about it. We're extremely open to work with you to identify exactly what kinds of projects or elements of those projects would be most applicable for our funding, and that counts both in OSAS and in DEMOS. We are extremely approachable. For development phase, we're also accepting any technology readiness level, so anywhere along the development pipeline. There's going to be more funding allocated for more advanced projects, but we're willing to accept and consider applications throughout technology readiness levels. The services that you can apply to have a portion of the funds covered for just have to be those that will materially advance the project towards commercialization. And we're very open to working with you to figure out what exactly those services are and what they can do. We know there's a large breadth of services that could contribute materially in this way. And we want to work with you through that to be able to make sure that you find the best people for it and that it'll be the most effective in helping you advance. The funding window is currently 2 years, but there's a possibility of extension. Now, who is eligible to apply? As Richard mentioned, we have to have a Canadian to sign our agreement with. So it can be a Canadian SME, nonprofit, or public institution. This is including for international projects. So we work with projects that have collaborators all over the world, but there has to be a Canadian presence so that we can sign an agreement with them. When you're choosing a service provider, someone that you want to hire to have a portion of the costs covered through OSAS, you have to choose a Canadian service provider. We can also help you do a little bit of matchmaking there if you're looking for the right person or organization. Um, all projects have to be in alignment with our open science policy. Once again, as Richard said, the open science policy as you find it on Conscience right now, which will be under our resources and policies tab on the website, was specifically designed for therapeutics. But we understand that there can be all sorts of different technologies that can be submitted or can be the subject of an OSAS application. So we're looking for openness strategies that will align with the open science policy as designed for therapeutics, basically meaning that the product that you're developing and supporting data for that product should be openly shared by the end of the project. And finally, when it comes to selection priority, when we're figuring out who we want to select, priority is going to be given to areas where market solutions are limited. These are some examples of which Richard talked about with AMR and pandemic preparedness and rare diseases, but market solutions are limited in all sorts of fields. So we can work with you to figure out exactly whether that qualifies, where openness is key, and ones that are further down the development pipeline. The criteria that we're going to be considering when we review an application have to fall into a couple of larger buckets about scope and fit. So those are the scope and fit of the priority selection criteria we just talked about. We're also going to be looking at the underlying scientific merit or rationale of the project that you're developing. Sometimes that will rely, especially in the drug development space, on in-house expertise, and sometimes we'll have to bring in external reviewers. We're going to be assessing the expertise of the service provider. So, is the service that you want to obtain going to materially advance? And is the service provider that you want to engage the one who's most qualified to provide that particular service? And then the extent to which the project plan is aligned with our open science policy and open science criteria. How does the funding work? This is getting into a bit of the nitty-gritty. So the funding is on a reimbursement basis. So that means funds have to be spent and then we reimburse those funds later. There's our funding maximum. The default is 33%. However, if it's well justified for the priority selection criteria, we can go up to 50%. We do need proof of matching funds by the time the agreement is signed. So you do not have to have proof of matching funds to submit an initial application, which the process I'll go through in just a little bit, or to go through the full proposal. But before we can sign an official funding agreement, we do have to have proof of matching funds. Conscience also has a 5% admin fee, so we would invoice you for 5% of the eligible funds that we transfer to you, and there's a 10% holdback until the end of the project. So until the project is completed, until the consultant or whoever you hire has successfully delivered to you what they have promised to deliver, there will be a 10% holdback. So all of this to say, let's say you want to engage a consultant for $100,000. There would be a payment schedule that we'd figure out with that consultant. You'll have to shoulder those costs up front and then submit a claim. And then we would reimburse you for 33 or 50% of those costs incurred every quarter. Um, if you have any questions about that, please, we can talk in the question and answer period. And also my colleague Jishan from our finance office is on here. So he has all of the various nitty-gritty about that. And once again, just reiterating the priority selection criteria. So how do you apply? There's a two-stage process. First, we have an initial application. This is really just a scoping and eligibility exercise. So it's a relatively short application. You can access it through filling out a Google form on the OSAS website, or sorry, on the Conscience website. If you go to Conscience, go to Programs, OSAS program, and then you should read it, and then click apply here at the bottom. That'll automatically open up the Google form for you. Fill it out. And last little note here, a single organization or consortium can submit multiple applications. So if you have multiple different external third-party services you want to access or you want to be able to hire, you can submit them, and you can submit to both OSAS and Demos. If you're going to submit to Demos, please go to the Demos page under the Programs tab and use their application portal. Now, the information you're going to be asked to provide on your initial application, like I said, it's relatively short, but we're going to need information about who you are and your organization, about the product or service, kind of the what it is in the stage of development, the identity of the external service provider, as well as what services you want them to provide for you, how they're going to advance, an estimate of the costs. We don't have to go too detailed into the costs. That'll happen in a full application, but for now, we do need an idea of what you estimate the costs will be. The person at your organization who will be responsible for engaging with that, which could be you or it could be someone else within your organization. Details about alignment with the open science policy. Once again, ask us about that. And then to identify conflicts of interest and if you'll need to give confidential information. If you don't have all of this information, you can still reach out to us and you can still submit an LOI, and we'll work with you to make sure that you can find an appropriate service provider, understand the nature of your costs, or whatever other assistance you need. So after you submit your initial application, you'll get a confirmation email. We'll then get back to you with an eligibility and scope decision within 10 business days. When we do that, we will respond with some feedback. You might be acceptable without revisions. You might be acceptable with recommendations, acceptable with revisions, or not at this particular time. Basically, acceptable without revisions is pretty self-explanatory. Acceptable with recommendations is we will identify ways that you can improve your application when you move on to the full application process. You do not have to incorporate them. And then acceptable with revisions, once again, relatively obvious. You have to account for the elements that we identify under revisions in your full application. So some tips for the initial application. If you have questions about how our open science policy or really any of it works, please reach out. We'll set up a meeting. We'll talk you through it. We can guide you through the process. Um, at this point, please don't submit confidential information or information that you can only share under a CDA, because under the initial application, we're not bound by CDA obligations. If you find yourself in a position where you can't submit even an initial application without some kind of confidentiality agreement, please reach out. We'll see what we can do to work with you. If you hear that your initial application is accepted, first of all, celebrate. Second of all, we will then follow up with you over email with a full proposal template as well as a budget template. On the full proposal, you provide much more detailed information about who you are and the product or service that you're developing, the services that you want to request, and the impact they're going to have on the development of your particular product or service. We're going to be breaking this down not only by product or service, but also and how the consultant or third party is going to help, but also milestones. So breaking that out over time. The You'll also be asked to provide proof of matching funding by the time we're ready to sign an agreement, and a budget, which you can provide on a budget template. There's all sorts of rules about eligible costs, so we can help guide you through those as well. And finally, how specifically in your full proposal you'll align with the open science policy. To reiterate, they must include the revisions from the feedback on your initial application, and we do highly recommend addressing the recommended revisions. If you do have to submit confidential information in a full proposal, which does happen, we have a CDA, a one-way CDA, which we can send out to you. Sorry, confidential disclosure agreement for those of us not in the nerdy legal acronyms space. Um, And if we do need to share your proposal with external experts for validation and review, they also are bound by confidentiality obligations. So we can support you throughout this entire process. If your full proposal is approved, we will try to inform you within 1 month of submission of the final proposal if it is in fact approved, if it doesn't require external reviewers. If it requires external scientific peer review, it's going to take longer. We'll make sure that we update you with a timeline on that. Um, Once you're approved, we'll set up an onboarding meeting to make sure that you are fully aware of the contracting process, the claims and reporting periods, as well as when you have to submit a milestone report, all of which will have templates that are provided for you. And we really try to make it as easy as possible by providing these templates. And there's like spreadsheets with various different formula that will automatically let you know here's the amount that you're going to be reimbursed this particular time, here's the amount that is going to be held back, here's the amount that is going to be subject to an admin fee. So when we provide these templates, we want to make it as easy for you as possible. Nonetheless, if you run into difficulties, we have our advisory services team as well as our financial team who can help walk you through. Finally, we're launching one of these RFPs every single year. Right now, we're in our 2025 RFP, but we'll be launching another one in 2026. Planning on doing that under an application portal. So rather than going through the Google form and then the template, we'll have an online application portal just to ease the process. If you have an approved project before that time, you'll be automatically migrated to the portal, and then we'll be able to use that portal to go back and forth. If you have any questions, need any support, please reach out, contact me, dylan.roskams-edris@conscience.ca. Or if you're a service provider and are watching this, please also reach out so that we can learn about you. We can potentially matchmake you with applicants. Finally, the if you have other questions about how to incorporate open science into your work, you can book a consultation meeting through through our guidance in open science program. We can help guide you through incorporating open science into all sorts of different elements of your work. You can access that and become a member by visiting our website and going to our consultation services to sign up. All right. With that, we've reached time for our Q&A. Like I said before, you can submit questions through the chat or you can raise your hand to ask them live. This part of the recording will not be shared openly. And finally, if you have questions about Demos as opposed to OSAS, you can try to ask them here and we'll do our best to answer them. But our recommendation would be to reach out to the Demos program manager, Rasham, at her email to help as much as possible with that.